Welcome to the week 5 video demo. We're going to walk through arrays, array initialization to try to help some of you guys out with some issues you seem to be having with this week's assignment. A lot of you have written me and it seems to be problematic, and I've taught this enough in other schools at least where arrays seem to cause a lot of frustration to first-time programmers. So I'd like to walk through a few things. Before we get there though, I'd like to recommend that you guys take a look at this tutorial from Oracle. The website is https://docs.oracle.com, Java SC tutorial, Java, nuts and bolts, arrays.html. If you have trouble seeing that, here's a bigger version of it. And this is a pretty good tutorial. It walks you through a lot of things you're going to need that could help you with this week's assignment. But hopefully we can get through this together, and this video will help you with some of the questions you might have. As usual, I have a comment header, right? Assignment, my name, purpose, today's date. And we have a public class init arrays, okay? We're not going to use a scanner console object. Let's just get rid of that. But let's walk through what we want this program to do. I'm going to create an array named myArray0 using static initialization. We'll talk about what that means in a moment. We're going to print individual elements of myArray0, which is the array we created, to the screen. We're going to change the value of 2 elements in the array. Then we're going to create a second array named myArray1 using dynamic initialization. We're going to set the first 3 elements of myArray1 using individual assignments, right? And then we're going to print the individual elements of myArray1 to the screen. Then we're going to learn how to use loops, use a for loop actually to walk through any elements of any array. We're going to walk through myArray0 and print those to the elements to the screen. And in a second loop, we're going to loop through the elements of myArray1 and assign new values to the elements. This is going to be our dynamic initialization. Okay? We're going to multiply the elements by the first half, in the first half of myArray1 by 10, and then we're going to multiply the elements in the second half of myArray1 by 15, and that should give you a pretty good idea. So what are arrays? Let's go back to this tutorial. An array is the container object that holds a fixed number of values of single data type. Here we have int, an array, okay? So this is an array of type int, okay? This is actually a reference variable that points to an array. This is actually dynamic memory allocation for the array, okay? So you could look at an array as a series of boxes that hold values, okay? You index those values you access those values using what's called an index, okay? Here we have index 0 in an array, okay? We're setting the first element here to have a value of 100. Here we're setting the second element. Here you notice its second element is 1, the first element is 0. They're always 0. They always start with 0, right? The first index is always 0 in most arrays, in most languages. I think an old school Visual Basic, I think at some point that was indexed with 1, or there's some irritating language. I've seen languages where they actually index with 1, an array with 1, and that causes all sorts of really irritating errors. But for the most part, arrays are indexed starting with 0. That's your first index. And again, when I say an index, I mean the number that points to your position in the array, right? This number, this index actually points to your position within this array. So index 0 means the first position, we're setting that to 100. Index 1 is the second position, we're setting that to 200, okay? Another important thing to remember is this is fixed length. Once you set the length, it's set, okay? After creation, the array length is fixed, yep. Okay, so let's go ahead and walk through this. We're going to use what's called static initialization. That's dynamic initialization. We're going to start out with dynamic initialization. In this case, that's multi-dimensional arrays. We don't want to go there. Well, let's just walk through what that is. Let's go ahead and look at what dynamic static initialization is. So let's start out with, first we're going to create our reference variable, right? Int my array 0. Okay? So this is just like the address of the hunk of memory we're going to create in a moment. In this case, the hunk of memory is created by using these two curly braces. We're just going to put in a bunch of numbers. We're going to put in the number 10, 40, 70, 100, 130. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 elements. This is creating an array of length like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Length 5. Ta-da! So this is called static initialization, right? Because it's set at this value is set when we first create the array. When we make the memory here, this is actually creating a chunk of memory, right? This is a big chunk of memory within the heap, within the computer, and we're setting values in it, okay? So let's go ahead and access these elements of the array. So how do we print to the screen? We have system.out.println. If you guys don't know this yet, write me. This is something you should be very familiar with by now, right? So if I wanted to print hi to the screen, I could do that. And instead of doing that, let's print the first element of the array. So to print the first element of the array, we're going to do my array 0, 0. It's going to print the very first element of the array. To print the second element of the array, let's just copy this. Do 1. Third element, 2. Let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. So I just saved it. We're going to compile. And we run it, and we get 10, 40, 70. Which is the first element, second element, first element, second element, and third element. Okay? Matter of fact, we can even write that. This is the first. This is the first element. Okay? This is the second element, right? This is the third element, right? And okay, this is Sparta. Okay, let's run this and see what we get. Once we run this, come on, run the code, and we get let's put a little space there. Let's run it again. Compile it, we'll run it. And we got, this is the first element 10, this is the second element 40, this is the third element 70, and this is, okay. A little too much free time, a little too much caffeine this morning. Okay, so there we go, right? So you notice we have concatenation operator in Java to print these elements to the screen to make this into a string. So this actually takes an int, converts it into a string, and stores it there. But you guys should be good with that by now. Okay? Let's move forward. So the next step, we want to change the value of 2 elements in the array. So let's do this. My array, let's take 2 equals 15. My array 0 equals 24. My array 1 equals 66. So I'm changing the elements I changed previously. We're just going to, the elements I printed previously, to the screen previously. So let's print them again. This is the new value for the first element. All right. Okay. Great. Okay, there we go. So let's see what we get now. We'll just compile this. My mistake. What do we got here? Oops. Yeah. Okay. Today's lesson, never get cocky. All right, let's get clear. Okay. All right, compile this. We'll run this, and let's walk through this. So the first element is 10, second element is 40, third element is 70. That looks right. Then when we change the values, we get, this is the new value for the first element is 24. Right? We set that there. This new value for the second element is 66. The third element is 15. Right? So notice we can reassign values to this array after we assign them. Okay? So we could use this. We're going to use this. So instead of setting these things first, right, instead of using the static initialization, we're going to use dynamic initialization to first declare the chunk of memory, okay, with zeros actually placed as placeholders there, and then we're going to set the values. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a second array called myArray1. So int square brackets myArray1. Notice you don't have any spaces there. You can't have any spaces there. Equals, we're going to use the keyword new, which again creates a big chunk of memory. Okay. In this case, we're creating an array, an int array. Arrays are actually classes in Java. In a lot of languages they aren't. In C++, C, most low-level languages they aren't. But in Java, arrays are actually objects. But we'll look at that in a minute. All right, we got a new int of size 5. Okay. And let's compile that. Well, let's clear this. Compile that. And it compiled cleanly. That's great. So this actually sets the same in length of this array. You notice we have 5 elements here. This is a length of 5. So these two things actually have the same length. I'll even prove it. Print the length of the first array. Print the length of the second array. So again, system.out print line. My array 0 has length. So there's this really cool variable, internal variable, object variable, class variable, called length within any array. So every array has my array 0.length that you can call, and will actually print the length of the array. All right. Okay, so let's run this now and see what we get. Great. So my array 0 is length of 5, my array 1 is length of 5. So two different arrays, one using dynamic initialization where we explicitly set the length, and one where we explicitly set 5 elements using static initialization, right? And the two have the same length, which is pretty cool. Well, at least to me. I'm really easily amused. Okay. So we're going to set the first 5 elements of myArray1 using an individual assignment. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's print out the values that are there now. Okay. Print the current values of the first 3 elements of myArray1. And let's go and do this. Copy and paste is your friend, believe me. Okay, let's see what we get. So let's compile this. So because we haven't set any of these values here, what do you think those values are? Let's take a look. We get, this is the first element in myArray1 is 0, second element is 0, third element is 0. So these things start out with values of 0. Okay? So let's try to set the first 3 elements using individual assignments. So it would be pretty much the same thing we did here. Right? We're just going to change these to myArray1. And let's do this in order so you guys aren't as confused. Let's set the first value to, what do we got? 10, 40, 70. Let's just do that. We'll go 10, 40, 70. Right? We'll use this again. Let's just do this. Okay. Okay. There we go. So, right, we're printing out the values that are held in this array. So let's go ahead and compile that. Clean compile, we'll clear that, run this. And we get, okay, at first, this is the first element of my array 1 was 0, 0, 0. Now we have 10, 40, 70. Okay, we're setting these dynamically, all right? Okay, so that's great. So what is a dynamic array bias? I mean, you still have to set the individual elements, and this seems a lot more cumbersome and a pain in the butt than having to do this, right? I mean, that looks pretty easy. Unless, of course, you get 500 elements, right, or 5,000, or what do you do at that point? Okay? This is where we come up with dynamic initialization. Dynamic initialization, there's several ways to do it, but the way we're going to do it here, we're going to use a for loop. Okay? We're going to walk through the individual elements within the array. We're going to assign them a value. So let's go ahead and do that. So you guys remember for loops, right? For, right? We start out with initialization, int I equals 0. So this is our condition. As long as I is less than, let's do my array 1.length. Oops, sorry, my mistake. We're going to first walk through the elements of the array. So let me show you how to walk through the elements of an array first. Just do that for now. My mistake. So let's walk through, using a for loop, we're going to walk through the elements of the first array and print them to the screen. So instead of having to do this every time, which again is kind of a pain in the butt, right? That kind of sucks, all sorts of suck. To have to do that, let's just print them to the screen. So for int I equals 0, I is less than my array 0.length, which is going to give us, we saw earlier, that gives us the length of an array, right? Any array, it's always going to work. I plus plus. So again, this is our initialization for the for loop, right? This is our test, our conditional, and this increments the value, okay? If I had time, I'd show you a neat trick, but I don't want to confuse you guys anymore. Some of you guys are having trouble with this, so let's just keep moving forward. So let's do a system.out.println, right? The value of element, well, let's do a little neat trick here, plus I plus equals, we're going to do this. So we're going to take the array we want to access, my array 0. What we're going to do is we're going to use I, the integer I, to index this array. So instead of using a hard-coded value like 0 or 1 or 2, we're going to use the 0 or 1 or 2 that's held in this counter I within the loop. So every time through the loop, I is going to go from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. And we're going to use that variable to access, right, to index, okay, our array. So let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. Let's clear this guy off, compile this. We're going to run it, and we get, let's see what we got here. We get 24, 66, 15, 130. You notice earlier on, we changed these things to 24, 66, and 15. That holds, and the last two values are still there. So this code is a lot less error prone than having to type this over and over again, okay? Which is kind of cool. So let's go ahead and do this. 0. It's just a different way to print this. Right, we'll clear this. This is a little bit cleaner to me. That was actually kind of wrong. the idea behind it was wrong. So run it, and there we go. All right. Okay, we'll run that. Woohoo. Okay. So the value of my array 0, 0 is 1, it's 24, 66, 15, 100, 130. We can also set the values in an array. So as I was saying earlier, as I started to type earlier, in our second array, we're going to actually set the initial values, okay, for this myArray1 variable. myArray1 dot I, and let's set that to, let's just give it a value of 250 for now. Let's give it a value of 10 for now. Okay? And let's print that while we're doing it. Okay, so we'll compile this, clear that. We're going to run it and see what we get. All right, so you notice we just get all values of 10. So previously we had a value 10, 40, 70 in the values for held in the array myArray1. It got overwritten here, and we have new initial values for this array. They're not actually initial values, but they're new values for the array. Okay, which is cool. So that's an easy way to do it. We can change this number to anything, right? We can change it to 150 times 200. Okay, run that, clear that. So I compile that, clear that, I run it. And you notice they all now have a value of 30,000, which is 150 times 200. Okay? So let's do this. What would happen if we set this to I plus 1? What do you think we're going to get now for this value? So I starts out at 0. So we're going to have, for element 0 in this array, it's going to have the value of 0 plus 1, which is 1. Then we increment the loop the next time through. I is going to have a value of 1. So the second element in the array is going to have a value of 1 plus 1, which is 2. And we're going to keep going through the length of the array. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, and we'll run you. And there we go. We get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? So let's leave that for now. Let's multiply. Let's go through the first half of the array. Okay? And multiply the elements by 10. So again, because I'm a lazy guy, I'm just going to copy and paste. All right. And we're going to multiply the first half of the array. So instead of going to length, right, I'm going to show you kind of a cool trick. So we're going to create a variable to hold half the length of the array. So pretty much we're going to do int half len equals my array 1 dot length divided by 2. Okay? And now we're going to use that, right? And this is going to walk us through, right? This is half the length. This is going to be like 2, because again, in Java, we just truncate, right? So we're going to go from 0 to 2. And we're going to set the value to, let's do what's already there. So we're going to take the value that's there, right? Let's multiply it by 10 and see what we get. Okay? So again, this is just, I created a variable, half len, that's going to store half the length of this array, and we're just going to walk through half that length. You don't have to do it that way, but it makes life easier. All right, we'll clear that, we'll run it, and ta-da! So we get, notice we're at 0 and 1 have a value of 10 and 20, where initially they had a value of 1 and 2. Okay. Let's go through and multiply the elements of the second half of the array by 15. See how we can do that. So we're going to start from half len, and then we're going to go from myArray1.length. Okay. And let's multiply that by 15. Okay. So again, you notice we're doing this myArray1 myArray I equals myArray I times 10. There's an easier way to do it. You guys remember the assignment operators that work sort of like this. Okay, it's going to be it's pretty much equivalent to the same code I had earlier. So let's go ahead and compile this. So this times equal is actually the same as that. Okay, we're just going to do an assignment and a multiply at the same time. Again, a little less code to type. Okay, let's do that. I'm going to run it. And there we go. So the first element is 10 and 20, and then we get 45, 60, and 75, which is, right, 3 times 15 is 45, 4 times 15 is 60, 5 times 15 is 75. So that's kind of cool. So this is walking you through iterating through an array, getting elements, setting elements, and what you might need to do to solve this week's program. I think this should help you out and get you to a place where maybe you have an idea of what's going on. Arrays are tough. I'm the first one who's willing to admit that. There are a lot of resources online. Oracle has a lot of great tutorials. There are tons of tutorials out there about using arrays. But I think hopefully this might help you out a little. Well, that's all I got. Hope you guys have a good week, and I'll talk to you guys next week.